All right, let's check the feed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booyah, we're live. Welcome to the 57th live episode of the Hagwon Startup Podcast. I'm your host, Jack, located here in South Korea in the city of Ulsan. The Hagwon Startup Podcast deals with everything and anything related to pardon me, to the life living in South Korea as well as around South Korea, if that's happened to be the topic of the day. And we also occasionally talk about things, about things related to the Hagwon industry and the Gombobang industry here in South Korea. Today, we're kind of in the middle between those two topics. Our guest is Ethan Brook. Is that how you pronounce your name? Last name?
Yes, that's Brook. Perfect.
Fantastic. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for agreeing to join and have a chat. Ethan is a student at the Korea University in Seoul, which is one of the Sky University, the top tier universities in the country, which is very cool. I didn't even know that until you sent me your bio, to be honest. So that was a pleasant surprise, actually. And Ethan and I are both admins on a travel group, which we will talk about in a little bit. But yeah, here we are. It's Monday today. What's the date today? The 16th.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And Sophia is in the chat. Hi, Sophia. Nice to see ya. We're just finding out too that school opening days are being postponed again until April 6th, right? It's not confirmed, but it seems like it's the talk of the day. A lot of people are talking about it, and I guess, did you say that the official announcement's coming out tomorrow?
That's what I've heard, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was told, but it seems to be pretty solidly penciled into a whatever Mo booklet there is. Anyhow, okay, so Ethan, we're gonna start off with like the regular questions, who you are, where do you come from, and the first one is, when did you come to Korea? So how long have you been in the land of the morning calm?
I came at the end of 2016, so in August. So I've been here for 4 years now, and just came to, like you said, study in university. So I'll be graduating this year.
Okay.
So yeah, 4 years at the moment, coming up on 4 years.
Okay. So, like in my days in uni, the only thing I thought about, when I was thinking about graduating and coming to Asia to teach English, Japan was basically the usual suspect. That was the first nation that people talked about. And I only heard about Korea from a friend who was here, and coming to Korea was kind of, to teach English was kind of a secondary or maybe even a tertiary option. But you came to Korea with a specific goal to study at a university, is that right?
Actually, so when did you come to Korea?
2005. So when I mean,
okay.
Like in my days, I meant like, back then, like thinking about studying in Korea was probably on nobody's mind.
Right. Actually, so when I was in high school, I was kind of bored, I guess, with New Zealand. Like, a lot of people really want to move to New Zealand, and it's considered like a dream destination by a lot of people. But I think that it's very nice in lots of ways, but also for like a younger person, I think, especially I was in like a smaller city, about 50,000 people, and I kind of couldn't imagine staying there for my whole life. And I viewed it sort of as somewhere that I was trapped, just because there was a lot of, like, life was too calm, I think, almost for me. And I look forward to going back to that. But at the time, when I was just finishing high school, I thought I want to go somewhere a lot more lively or a lot more exciting. And actually, like you said, I thought of Japan and China, but China I kind of crossed off early, and
Right.
just due to language barriers, all of the universities basically require fluent Chinese, whereas Korea, it's you come in and you can learn Korean while you're studying, and as long as you have it by the time you graduate, it's okay. However, like Chinese universities, when you go in, you have to know Chinese. And I looked at doing an exchange in high school to Japan, and I actually learned Japanese for about a year. And then I got rejected right at the end. They had accepted me for the exchange, and everything was going ahead. And then right at the end, they said, "Oh, sorry, actually, we don't have a place anymore." So I was kind of heartbroken. But at the same time, Korea had been the place that I had wanted to go the most. But in high school, I wasn't able to go there for an exchange because the rules were a lot more strict.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, instead of doing a high school exchange, why don't I just wait a few months because I was about to finish, and instead try to apply for universities in Korea. So similar to what you said, I think I did probably consider other countries first, like Japan. But then when that plan fell through, everything worked out in the end because Korea was my first choice, but I thought I wasn't going to be able to come due to the more difficult restrictions. So I guess I don't really, a lot of people ask why I chose Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I think a combination of a lot of things, just like I said, wanting to go somewhere that was a lot more lively. When you look at like the media, you always see East Asia as like a very different place, somewhere that has a vastly different culture, somewhere where life is a lot faster paced. And I think just wanting to go somewhere and experience a totally different culture and see what life is like in basically the furthest opposite to New Zealand that I could get. So it's an interesting reason, but I think that was probably my biggest driving factor for coming to Korea.
Wow. Very, very different approach from like how I ended up in these necks of the woods. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so your decision to study in Korea, so initially like you wanted to do high school, but you couldn't because whatever the restrictions there were. What are you studying right now at the university? Like what's your major? What are your goals in that department?
So I study international relations.
Mm-hmm.
So basically just international politics and a bit of economics. I'm not sure where I want to go with that. When I sort of came into university, I was always advised, like my parents always had the advice of just study something that you can see yourself enjoying,
Mm-hmm.
rather than something that you feel you'll be successful in. Obviously, something where you can have both is the best.
Sure.
And that's the hope. But I thought the international relations just sounded like something that would take my fancy and still be interested in a few years. So basically just economics and politics with a focus on politics.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent field. I don't know. It feels like you could branch out of that. I think in many different directions once you get there, which is good. I think.
Yeah, I think there's limited jobs, but it's a very interesting field.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there are limited jobs. Maybe. I think if you look at it that way, every area is limited. I did my master's in psychology simply because I went to uni. I had no idea what I wanted to study, and Psych 101 was one of the required courses that I had to take in my first year, and I just loved it. And I just continued studying it despite the fact that I wasn't really good at passing the exams. I
Right.
loved listening to the topics. And then, with psych, basically, it's kind of like medicine, right? You can't become half a doctor. You have to go all the way. In psychology, it's a similar process. Like you have to go all the way and get your PhD in order to be a psychologist. Otherwise, you just completed an MA or BA or MA, and you can, there are limitations. But I think like with time, I don't know, with time your tastes change. Like I've noticed that the things that I didn't care about when I was in uni, I do, like I look at them a lot differently. Like just more recently, I started, maybe because I watch sometimes this fella, Dr. Mike, and he posted a video. He's a physician in the States, and he posts videos about the coronavirus and whatnot. And he posted a video of his life in the hospital, and it seemed gripping. Like it seemed, it's hard work being a physician, but his job seems interesting. So I was thinking to myself, like, you know what, being a doctor is like, it will provide you with what you just said, like something you enjoy doing if you enjoy doing that. And I guess the income is quite good as well for certain doctors. But I guess the most important part is that you're doing something that you enjoy doing, provided that this is something you would want to do, right?
Yeah, that's the issue. But I still enjoy it, so I'm quite happy with the decision in the end.
What are some things that you can do with your major once you graduate?
So I think if I had studied in New Zealand, or particularly in any English-speaking country, the choices would be limited to like roles such as ambassador. Obviously, ambassador roles very limited. So working in like consulates or something for your country around the world. But then I think learning in Korea, provided that you come out knowing Korean, at least to a manageable level, I think that you also get a lot of opportunities, because not so much the political aspect, but you experience the cultures and you know about the economics as well, so that you can also go into like a lot of companies as, say, a salesperson for a particular country. So I think that if you come out knowing the language of wherever you were studying, provided that's not another English country, then there's a lot of bonus advantages, because you get so many opportunities which you wouldn't have if you just knew English. So you could end up working in actual politics, or with the knowledge that you get with the economics and around the cultural aspects, you can go into companies working as marketing if they're trying to expand into a new market, or basically a lot of different fields relating to relations between Korea and some other country.
Right. So, considering that, are your classes in English or are they in Korean?
So for my particular major, most are in English. Actually, for my major, because it's international relations,
Right.
Korean universities tend to view anything with international in the name as it should have a completely English curriculum, because in Korea, English is viewed as the international language, right? So for me, I can study everything in English, and all of my major required classes are in English. However, there are some classes which aren't offered in English. So there's a few interesting classes, maybe like political security or something like that, which will only be offered in Korean. However, those are all optional classes.
Okay. So prior to applying, were you required? Sorry, did you study Korean prior to applying for the universities here?
No,
No.
I didn't
Okay,
come in knowing any.
But now you are learning it, right, at the uni? Like I assume you're attending some Korean classes and.
Yes, they've changed the requirements now. At least this is only for Korea University.
Yeah.
Not too sure about the other universities. But when I came in, you have to be fluent in English or Korean.
Okay.
So I got in on fluency on English, and then by the time you graduate, you have to pass a certain topic level, which I think is 4, which is like not fluent, but it's very good. However, from what I've heard, the year after I got accepted, they changed it to basically you only have to pass either an English test with, say, IELTS and get a certain score, or pass the Korean test. So I got in the 1 year too early, because I have to do both languages. But no, so I have just started studying Korean since I came, but then I did it for 1 year, and then I haven't studied for 2 years, and then this year, since this is my last year, I will study it again.
That's very interesting because I remember years back, I was talking to a guy. He was from Russia. He was studying at the local university here, and I don't know. I never, considered studying at a Korean university because I'm dumb that way. It's just something not really. It wasn't really on my radar. I finished my studies. I had my. Actually, this was a long time ago. Anyway, studying at a Korean university was not something that I even considered, that I even thought about. But he was here, and I always wondered, like, how do foreigners study at Korean universities? Now, that was always kind of fascinating to me.
Not easily, that's
Not
for sure.
easily. Yeah.
It's I think like just there's not intentional barriers, but there are so many barriers because like even things such as paying like tuition from New Zealand banks, it's impossible, and you have to there's so many documents, and obviously that stands for any country, but like for example with the visas, they only give it to you the day before you're due to fly out, and the whole process is extremely rushed and I think very difficult. You have to really want to go to actually come because everything is so rushed, and like when they send out the certificates, it takes a month to come, and then there's so many difficulties, and then you have to do the tests, send the test results back to Korea, and then it's a bit of a mess, but if you really want to, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, that sounds like just the way things are done in Korea. Like everything should have been done yesterday, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
How do you find your program overall? I guess I don't know if you were comparing it with other universities in terms of course loads or quality or professors. Good, bad. Like what's the standard here?
So I do political relations, which is pretty much a lot of not maths, right? A lot of writing, and there's a lot of discussion in the classes. There's a lot of essays you have to write, so it's quite a heavy workload. But from my experience, because I've also studied statistics classes here, just for my own entertainment, because I enjoy statistics.
That's not
everybody
something
laughs when I say that.
I do statistics for the kicks of it. All right.
Yeah, no one believes me when I say that one. When I've gone into those classes, compared to what I've experienced in New Zealand, they are incredibly difficult because in Korea, in a lot of the classes, you're not allowed calculators, for example. Whereas in a Western university, that's unheard of. A calculator is kind of something that you expect to be able to use. So in regards to course difficulty, I think the language or the writing-based classes are probably easier than they would be, or the ones that I've seen and experienced in New Zealand. But classes in math-heavy subjects, say engineering, or if you do statistics major, will be incredibly hard because not only are those classes, the whole curriculum only taught in Korean, but you will have to basically be a math genius because in a lot of them you won't be allowed calculators or anything. In regards to the actual teaching quality, it obviously is dependent on the professor, but I think that it varies a lot, possibly too much. There are some great professors, but there's also a lot who are, I wouldn't say bad, but they are so, how do you say it? Like they have their curriculum, which they have taught for maybe 10 years, and nothing changes, and the curriculum has to be completely structured, which, it could be a good thing, but in lots of the ways, it's also very old-fashioned, very outdated, and lots of the professors also are that way. If you miss more than one class, you get an F.
Really?
For some of them, every professor's allowed different rules, and it's a real pain. It's probably the worst part. Foreign professors, of which there are quite a lot, especially in my major, tend to be a lot more free with their classes. You can attend if you want to, don't attend if you don't want to, kind of much more similar to what I've experienced in New Zealand. You know, university I'll say in the West, is more something that is the belief is that the students should be motivated to learn, and it's your own learning. You're trying to learn because you have a goal. You're motivating yourself. In Korea, it's still structured a lot like high school. Actually, it's more strict than my high school in New Zealand was, with attendance and with homework, and they don't upload online course materials because they want to force you to come to class.
Right.
It's good, but it's very different.
Right. I taught university in Korea for 7 years, and it always baffled me the idea of keeping attendance at a university class was a very, very foreign idea. And I always wondered why that is. But it's interesting to hear that you just said that if some professors fail you for missing more than one class. From my experience, we were like, at least maybe there is a difference in how universities look at foreign professors teaching English versus maybe foreign professors teaching specific subjects. Because I mean, there are different levels of foreigners teaching in universities, right? Like for myself, I was just an instructor, not a professor. There's the perception that, when you work at a university, a lot of Korean students immediately call you a professor, which is not necessarily the case, right? In the West, you need to have a PhD in order to be qualified as a professor. So for most foreign instructors are just that, they're language instructors, right? So I think maybe the standards or the expectations that are set for university instructors versus professors are different, and a lot of the times I remember, we were always told in our department not to fail or we were encouraged not to fail students. So it's interesting to hear you say that professors could fail a student, if they missed one class, because that would be unheard of. Like we'd have students who didn't submit their work and just, were doing horribly in their classes, and we'd still be asked not to fail them. Granted, this is not, these were not universities in the top 3 in the top tier. Some of them were actually at the very opposite spectrum of that of that list. But yeah, it's interesting to hear the different perspective on that.
I think it comes down. I think so. If you do go to the classes, like I said, attendance is very often very strict. It really depends on the professor, and that is probably the worst aspect of studying here, at least in my opinion, because some professors, you can skip 7 classes, no consequence.
Right.
And some professors, you are late 3 times, and you lose 5% of your grade, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you go to all of the classes, if you go to at least the minimum amount that you have to go to as set by the professor, I think it's similar to what you said. It's very hard to fail, because I've been to classes, and one class I didn't do the midterm exam or the final exam, and I still passed. And that was 70% of my grade, and leaving a possible 30%, and I'm sure I didn't get that complete 30%. It should have been impossible for me to pass, right? But because I still went to the class, I think if you go to them, it's very hard to fail.
Okay.
However, I think perhaps the biggest difference between the experience in New Zealand and here, and probably by extension for many universities around the world, is in the West, going to university is generally relatively easy. Being able to be accepted into a university. Obviously, there are exceptions. There's some very prestigious universities, but generally getting into a university isn't very difficult, but graduating requires a lot of work. Whereas in Korea, it seems that getting into university is extremely difficult, especially if you want to go to, say, a Sky University. The acceptance rates are like 2% or 1% for Seoul National. Getting in is extremely hard, but once you're in, it's very easy to graduate, because most of the time, as you said, it's very hard to fail.
Right. Sorry, Sophia was just saying goodbye because she's got to go, so I just messaged her, typed back saying goodbye. Thanks for stopping by, Sophia. Yeah, that's exactly that's the perception I always had as well. Just the way you described it, that it was very difficult to get into university here in Korea, but once you were in, it was just kind of easy coasting through, whereas back home, it's rather easy to get in, or at least, like you said, some prestigious universities have higher standards. But once you're in, that's when the work begins. Like, there's no way that you could not come to class, not because, of attendance or because the prof would fail you, but simply if you didn't attend, you were not able to listen to some of the things the profs would say, and the notes were not always available online. So like you would miss about 25% of the class, of the material that's covered in the classroom, and that will definitely be on the midterm or the final exam, and 25% is a massive part of your grade. So like not attending classes, basically, you seal your own faith with the stamp of doom by not being there, right? So, but in Korea, it seems to be just the other way around. Like, yeah, it's hard to get in, but once you're in, it's kind of like the companies here. Like, you don't really get fired. Nobody gets fired unless you really, really mess up, So, okay, cool. If there's anybody out there, new listeners, or if you're watching this podcast after recording, if you do have any questions for Ethan, please leave them in the comment section, or you could contact him directly. Ethan has a website called, I posted it in the link below, it's www.soulinspired.com.
Yes.
.com. Really good website. What's the content of your website? And well, I don't know. How did you get into starting a website? Was it kind of something you planned, or being in Korea, you figured, hey, why not? How did that come about?
So just before I came to Korea, actually, I was on holiday with my dad, and he had a second-hand camera, which he wanted to get rid of. And he offered it to me and just said, are you interested in taking photos? If you are, I have this camera. It's quite old. It was like 8 or 9 years old. But if you want to try it out, and if you think you'll use it, why don't you have it? And, experience taking photos, see if you like photography. So I took the camera, and that was about 2 or 3 months before I came to Korea. So it was the perfect time, really. So when I came to Korea, I had just got a new camera, a new, very old camera, new for me. And having the camera, it's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it. But when you have a phone, right, at least for me personally, I didn't feel too inspired to take photos. I like taking photos with it. But when I had the camera with all of the functions, which I had no idea what they did, I felt just an urge to take photos and try to see what I could do with it. And when I came here, I had a month off before I started uni. So I spent all the time just going everywhere around Seoul, looking around, trying to take photos. And then I wanted to share them with people. So I started posting them on a private blog just for family and friends. And over time, I realized that even though they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, a picture with words is better. So I started sharing short articles on a blog platform like Blogger, so not a separate website. And after writing quite a lot, maybe 30 or 40 articles, I decided that it wasn't professional enough being on one of these websites, and I wanted to move on and try to, I guess, create a brand. So that was when I went on and made Soul Inspired. And it was basically just stemmed from the fact that I wanted to be able to share all of my experiences in Korea, because none of my family, actually one family member, has been to Korea, but that was 10 or 15 years ago.
Right.
And no one else had been here. And it was kind of, when you come overseas, it's lonely often. But for me, the fact that I found perhaps the most lonely was that when I would talk to my family, nobody could truly relate because nobody knew about Korea.
Right.
So I could talk about these experiences, something which I thought was really awesome or really unique, and they would be happy. You know, they would listen, but at the same time, you know, they don't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to share photos with them, videos with them, and try to show them what my life was like. And then
Right.
it kind of just got bigger, and some of my friends were like, asked me, why don't you share this with some other people? You have potential to, you know, make this something bigger. So I gave that a shot. And then that was about 2 years ago. So the blog's about 2 years old now.
All right. What's your viewership on that blog right now?
Well, with the virus, it was quite different. Without the virus, maybe about 30,000 people per month.
Wow.
So about no, sorry, not quite that much. About over 20,000
Mm-hmm.
up to 30,000. It's like kind of 800 per day, but sometimes a bit higher.
Okay.
But the virus was quite a boost.
Yeah, it was
So
quite
last
the
month
boost.
was massive.
Oh, you mean it jumped up after the virus?
At the start of the virus, because I have an article about pollution masks, and that really took off because everybody wanting to buy masks. So it was up to about 100,000 for January.
Right.
Um,
Ride the
now
wave.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's going down again, but it's still a bit up.
Well, I think these things come seasonally. One of the reasons why I started doing YouTube was for that very reason. Like I've been in Korea since 2005, and during my first year after I came here, what camera are you using, by the way? Like, what is the first camera you mentioned that your dad gave to you?
The first one was a Canon 400D, so it was a DSLR, but it was released in like 2007 or something. So when I got it, it would have been 9 years old.
Right. Similar story for me. One of the used camera that my dad gave me was a film camera. It was a what was it? A Nikon, maybe a Nikon. And so when I arrived to Korea, some of the people that were here were big time into photography, and I kind of figured, you know, why the heck not? So I got into photography as well, got my first DSLR Nikon, and yeah, I started doing some, you know, taking some pictures, started my own website, but then I just got sidetracked with other things. I left Korea for a couple of years and I came back, and by then I was heavily involved into doing my MA, and I really had no time for that stuff. So I've documented a lot. I had a lot of photography, lost half of it, actually a big chunk of it, because of my hard drive crashed. It was like 30 gigabytes of photography just went poof. But a couple of years ago, I started thinking about making videos on a different topic, and so I did, and then I realized that, hey, I'm already doing this, and it would be kind of cool to start, you know, recording, making memories of my experience here in Korea, because I had nothing, you know, there's no pictures since giving up photography a few years ago. Not giving up, but basically kind of, I don't know, drifting away from the hobby that I was developing. I had no records of my existence here in South Korea, and I thought that was kind of bunk. So that prompted me to basically start making videos, YouTube videos about my life here in Korea, which I hope, you know, my family could see, and then hopefully one day my kids could see, but also hopefully some other people out there are watching, and you know, and like it's helpful to some. So I think a lot of people who come to, like, I don't know, travel, like yourselves, myself, one of the ways of keeping memories is, you know, digital photography, videography, and all that fun stuff.
How long have you been going with the channel for?
It's been a year and a half now, I think. Possibly. I started making videos. So my first vain attempt at videography, at making a video, was in, I think, November of 2018.
Okay.
So over a year, right? A year, almost a year and a half
Yeah,
now.
like a year and a half.
Yeah. And those were like very dark videos in the basement, and it was about I was making videos on cryptocurrency because that was the kind of trend, and that was basically my goal. I wanted to start making videos about cryptocurrencies on YouTube, and I started doing that. And then slowly my focus changed, and I kind of realized, like, what the hell am I doing? I'm in Korea. Why don't I start making videos about Korea? So, you know, in my family, in my life here. So I started doing that, and have been carrying that on, you know, since then. 안녕하세요. There's somebody in the chat. Hey, Kenna, how are you? Old-time friend, resident of Tokyo. Welcome. Yeah, so it's interesting to see, like, I don't know, I don't know if it's the YouTube market. It's a lot more saturated, I think. How do you find, I guess, the space of, you know, creating a blog for Korea? How do you find that space, you know, the blog space, Korea blog space? Are there a lot of blogs similar to yours?
I think like website-wise, so blog-wise, there are quite a few, but not too many. I think that's part of the reason why I've done quite well is because a lot of countries have a very big, well, Korea has very big tourism too. But I think that the factor that makes Korea a little bit different is that the tourism in Korea generally doesn't come from English-speaking countries. It comes from China, Japan, Philippines. Obviously, Philippines is partly English-speaking, but Japan and China especially use their native languages, and obviously Korea uses Korean. So for people coming to Korea from the West, and I think Korea has become a much bigger attraction now with the takeoff of K-pop and especially BTS and things like that, Korea has become a much bigger attraction for tourists from English-speaking countries. And when I started my blog, there were probably a lot more, but there were about 10 big blogs which were established, which were in English. And I think that 10 is a few, but it's not overly saturated. It's still quite small. And when you consider how popular Korea is getting with English speakers now, with tourists from, say, the US, Canada, most European countries, Australia, New Zealand, it's going up and up. And I think that the fact that most of the resources here were in other languages left kind of a big gap for an English blogger to come in, or for multiple English bloggers to come in. I have done a few promotional events for the tourism agencies here, and they take like multiple influencers, I guess, so multiple YouTubers, vloggers, and they give them like content to write. I've been to those before, and normally it'll be about 5 English content makers, and then about 5 Chinese content makers, maybe 3 or 4 Japanese, and then there'll be 1 or 2 people from Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, other Southeast Asian countries. So I think that just perhaps the language differences, and Korea being having like 70% of its tourism, I don't know the exact stat, but it's a very, very large amount coming from non-English countries. It leaves a big gap because there weren't many people writing about it already.
Right. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think maybe there's in Seoul, the other like bigger bloggers, the ones that I've had contact with or I've seen their blogs, there's maybe 10 to 15, and then Korea overall, there's probably not that many.
Right.
But I think Seoul has maybe 10 to 15 bigger size bloggers.
Right. See, it seems like YouTube is saturated with people making videos about Korea. In and from. Bruno, hey Bruno, Bruno's in the chat. Bruno's asking, Bitcoin crashed. When is the best time to buy? What do you mean by crashed? What is it at? I have no idea. Do you follow the cryptocurrency market at all, Ethan?
I checked yesterday. It's $5,300, I think.
Shit, really? Yeah, that's a good time to buy. A week ago, I think it was about 8,000 or so.
I think it was. Yeah, it's not much though.
Well, let me tell you a story, Bruno, since you ask, okay? In 2018, at the time of February, Bitcoin stood at about $1,200. And I was thinking to myself, man, should I buy some? It's a hefty sum, $1,200, right? It's a hefty sum for a Bitcoin. And back then I was completely new and I had no idea how to purchase any Bitcoin. I had a hard time figuring it out. I was also a bit hesitant and I didn't really, how to go about it. A couple of months later, like literally looking February, March, April, May, Bitcoin stood at $4,000, which means that if I had purchased one for, $1,500, I would have made a hefty profit of about $3,000. And at that time I thought to myself, man, Bitcoin went up to 4,000. Can I afford buying a Bitcoin at $4,000? I still wanted to do it, but I wasn't too sure. And since again, I've never done anything of that sort. I've never invested into any markets. I was a complete green nose. I didn't. And then come February, Bitcoin in 2018, in November, all of a sudden the entire cryptocurrency market went freaking berserk. Bitcoin went from like 4,000 to 6, 7. It just kept rising to its peak of like 19,000 US dollars, I think, per Bitcoin. Okay?
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, and so I began kind of fiddling around with it more, investing more in November, which was a very, very late time. And any smart investor would tell you that that is probably one of the worst times to start investing, right? But heck, nobody knew, because I was looking at it a few months ago and I never thought it would go up this high, but then it did, right? So what was stopping it from going even further? And lo and behold, the whole market just went klabadabadoosh on its ass, right? And since November, for the entire duration of 2019, it just plummeted down to about 9,000, and it fluctuated between maybe 10,000 and I think 6,000. To its moment right now at 5,300, you said?
I actually just checked. From last night, it's gone from 5.3 thousand to 4.6.
Right.
It's dropped massively with the end of the weekend, I guess.
Yeah. So normally from the little that I've learned over the past year and a half, you should never purchase at the very bottom and never sell at the very top. Mainly because you never know what the very bottom is and you don't know what the top is. I guess a long-time investor would tell you that if you're looking to invest and you have the money, right now for a Bitcoin, when you consider where Bitcoin stood in the past of 19,000, 4,000 or whatever it is there, Ethan just said, is a very good price. Chances are that it will drop even further. But there are chances that it might go up drastically. Right now with the coronavirus, I have no idea. But yeah, 4,300, like comparing to the 19,000 that it was sold at worth, in November, 4,000 is a very good price. So markets, it's a gamble, and particularly the cryptocurrency market, because it's such a volatile market, because it's so easily manipulated, intentionally or unintentionally, actually both. Large investors can come in and purchase a huge amount of certain cryptocurrency, and the entire market just blows up. And that's pretty much what happened in the late 2018, which is why it's kind of risky to invest into it, because of its instability. But yeah, 4,000 for Bitcoin right now, that's a very good price. If I had the cash, I would buy it. Unfortunately, Corona has me buy my, men junk. And right now we're just trying to make ends meet with the school being closed for over a month, and investing into Bitcoin is the last thing I should be talking to my wife about, Yeah, but if you have the cash, go for it, man.
Actually, that was, when Bitcoin first, not when it first came out, but in the early days, when the altcoins started to get released, I did a lot of mining then. Actually, my stepdad was very into it as well. And I built up, not Bitcoin, but a lot of the altcoins. And actually, that was how I bought the camera that I have now. Was, I think, in the end of 2017, I had a bunch of Ripple.
Okay.
And that day, it was just around, I remember because my parents were here, it must have been in December of 2017. In Korea, it skyrocketed from about 80 cents or something per coin up to $3.50.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously you're buying in the thousands, or buying in high numbers, sorry. And I managed to sell them on that peak, which was
Nice.
only happening in Korea.
Yeah.
It was only on the Korean exchanges.
Yeah.
Bought it all on a New Zealand exchange and sold it in Korea. And that was how I managed to get my camera. It was just completely luck, basically, just looking at the exchange at the right time of the day and then selling everything.
Yeah, that's
I
perfect.
was very lucky.
Very lucky and very smart. I was in a similar situation. I bought a bunch of Ripple, and it skyrocketed. Unfortunately, I did not sell it at the peak because I was inexperienced and I was kind of, thinking, hey, there was a dip. I think early January there was a dip. It was a massive dip. It was strange, bizarre. I was panicking, but I thought it would recover. It didn't. It continued dropping, and I sold not at a loss, but with a very, very small profit compared to what I could have made had I sold it at like a week prior.
Right. I think the whole system, actually, because I never invested anything into any of the coins.
Mm-hmm.
I got, like I said, I mined some because I had a gaming PC.
Mm-hmm.
I did some mining, but then also how I said my first blog was on another platform.
Mm-hmm.
It was on a platform called Steemit, which is basically. Steam. Do you know of it?
Yeah.
Right.
I use Steam. I have some of the accounts.
Okay. Yeah, it's like it's for lack of a better word, it's like social media, like Facebook or Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you share something, you get upvotes, and the upvotes equal Steam currency. And depending on how much power the person has, it's a very bad system. But depending on how much, it's very top heavy, I guess. If a powerful person votes for you, they could give you, say, at the time when Steam was worth a lot, now it's not worth much at all, a good vote could give you like $10 or $20 for a single vote. And I had a few articles which went really well, and they would get about $200 worth of upvotes.
Right.
And from there, they limited how much money you could take out of the platforms to prevent, I guess, the coins going out too quickly. So it would take 13 weeks to take the money out.
Mm-hmm.
But I managed to make money just by sharing my photos and then pulling that out and then converting that into other currencies. So I got quite lucky that way. I managed to find the platform while it was still quite new before it got totally watered down, and now it's not really. Now it's just a mess. But
yeah, right. I think 2017 and mid and late 2018 were very good years to get into cryptocurrency, and after that, it just kind of went into, I don't know, down the hole. But hopefully that'll change with time. But who knows? So when is the best time to buy? Who knows?
If we knew, we'd all be rich.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So right before the start of the podcast, we were kind of talking about online learning, and so one of the things that a lot of Hagwon owners here in Korea are struggling with is making a living in a time of, when all schools are closed. For us here at the Shane School here, it's been 3 weeks now ongoing. Bruno says time to buy gold. I think it's always been time to buy gold. Gold seems to be, it's going to be the standard for a long time. I think Bitcoin still has got a long way to go. So a lot of the Hagwons here are trying to shift gears and move their businesses online, and it's not an easy shift. And it seems that Korean universities, or the universities in Korea, are doing the same thing. And you mentioned, Ethan, that you had your first online classes today. Do you care to share?
Sure. So as we were talking about earlier on, currently all education institutes, so schools and universities, are shut until, it was the 23rd, but now it's looking to be the 6th of April. So because of that, obviously, I guess the universities have a minimum amount of days that they have to teach every semester. So they chose to move all of the classes online, at least for the first few weeks. I'm hoping it will only be the first few weeks, but I think if the period of no school gets extended to the 6th, then they may as well just move it online for the whole semester. But yeah, we had the first classes today, and this was after a delay of 2 weeks already, with no university at all. The first classes were today, and it was basically a complete mess. They have a special website, Blackboard, which they're supposed to use,
Right.
but it's pretty infamous for being terrible.
Okay.
I think a lot of universities use it, but it's honestly crap. So my professor today, he was a foreign professor, and he decided instead to use Twitch and use Discord for talking, because he had a feeling that Blackboard would break, and he was very correct. It broke within seconds of 9 a.m., which were the first classes. So my first lecture today was okay, because he used Twitch for the video and Discord for the chatting, and actually that was decent, I think, because I'm not sure if you've used Discord before, but it has the capabilities to make like polls and votes and things like that. And even though it was made for like gamers to chat, it actually provides not a bad environment to, I guess, hold a online classroom. But after that, after the first class, my first class today, the Blackboard came back online, and the next lecture was on that, and that was basically just terrible, like disconnections. People couldn't get onto the platform. People couldn't see things. Some people couldn't see things. Some people would just freeze. Some people were getting page errors, and it was a mess. And every time there's a lot of traffic on the university websites, like when they have the course registration, the sites always go down. They go down every time. And I think, honestly, it's irresponsible of them, because as I'm not sure if you know, there's a lot of complaints right now. People want the universities to at least refund part of the fees. Because,
I heard something like that, yeah.
Yeah, not only is the semester shorter, but the education you're getting is, well, at this point, it's virtually non-existent, because the professor spent all the time trying to figure out how to get the stupid system working, and then it doesn't work properly. And I don't know, they really need, I don't know if it's just Korea University or all universities, they really need some actual proper technical people who, I don't know who they have doing this stuff, but not the right people.
Yeah, I wonder. In the past, I did look at universities like free online courseware provided by, I forget what it is, Coursera, I think it's called. It used to be free, entirely free. Now you can purchase courses, but the courses that are available through Coursera are provided by like Yale, Harvard, Stanford, and a bunch of other universities all across the world. They're pre-recorded, and the courses that I've checked into, they were really well made. They had videos, pre-recorded videos. They had all the necessary components. But the only thing was that they were made for that very purpose. So they were made ahead of time. Like the universities didn't have to deal with this sudden, the suddenness of the situation, where all of a sudden they needed to put everything up online. But it's interesting. Blackboard. Like, I don't even know how that works. Does Blackboard have? We used Blackboard at UNIST here at the university I was working at, but we didn't really have an interaction. Blackboard was only used for for students to come on and do some assignments, read some stuff, do some assignments, and submit their work. There was no live interaction.
Yeah, I've never seen a live interaction before. I don't know how they've done it. If Blackboard has rolled it out recently, or if it's something Korea University has kind of integrated, but it seems to be there now. But yeah, like I said, it's a absolute mess. I just saw the comment about Twitch and Discord must be gamers. I think he must be. I think the professor is a gamer, and he just won't admit it, because it's a weird choice of platforms to use for streaming a class.
Yeah, probably.
What if a few students disconnect? It definitely happened. A lot of people couldn't connect at all today, and I honestly don't know how they'll get around it because, disconnection from a lecture is very bad. You're not getting what you pay for, and you're not learning anything. And not only that, but Korean universities, at least my one, most professors don't upload lectures because it's all about the stupid attendance policies. You have to go to class, so why would they upload anything? Because you're going to class to learn. So it's the same for the online, and that's why you were saying about the other system where they pre-record videos. I think that sounds like a much better system because the way the professors here do it is they want interaction. They want you to prove that you're in attendance. So it has to be done live, but being done live just causes tons of issues, and
yeah,
I don't know how they're going to get around it.
I'm in a group here on Facebook, and it's a specific group dedicated to a specific cause with a specific clientele, and most of the people have been using Zoom. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Zoom is probably very happy right now. They offer free software for with some limitations, and then you can purchase a whole thing. And so the people have been kind of tinkering around with the software, and I've used it as well, and it's actually very smooth. I've actually considered maybe using Zoom instead of Skype in order to switch, but I haven't really had enough experience with Zoom itself to use it. I'm just thinking that maybe the feed would be a lot smoother using Zoom. But I've had several students logging in at the same time, and I mean, there's always hiccups due to connections, whatever. But in terms of the overall performance, it works really well. You can have a whiteboard which you can use, for presentations and writing. You can use PowerPoint. Like basically, you can use anything you have. PowerPoints, PDFs. You can play, share your screen, which allows you to basically show whatever you have on your laptop. So I'm surprised that universities wouldn't be using something like that, which is so much simpler, it seems, than Blackboard. That is not.
Definitely. I actually used Zoom for, I'm in a Toastmasters club, and their meetings have all moved online. So every Thursday I have a meeting which is now on Zoom. And I would agree with you. I did a presentation this week, and the screen sharing was just super easy.
Right.
It worked first time, and it seems like a piece of software that's actually made for conference calls, large calls, and it can actually handle these things.
Yeah, I think they have an option of you could have 100 people on call at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's some crazy number. Yeah. I think Blackboard, that they must have some agreement or something which makes them have to use Blackboard, or they just don't want to pay for the rights to use another piece of software. Or I don't know. I'm sure there's something somewhere, but it would be so much easier if they used software that was actually made for this instead of Blackboard and whatever Blackboard has seemingly quickly pulled out of nowhere for the virus.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was just kind of a thrown together software they just, added.
I get that feeling, yeah.
I'd purchase a Twitch Tier 1 sub to the professor's Twitch if he's partnered just for brownie points. Maybe many of the students didn't have a Twitch or Discord account and were unfamiliar with the platform. Yeah, I don't know how I don't know. I guess if you're a gamer in Korea, and there's plenty of them here, you would probably be aware of Twitch and Discord, I would imagine, right?
I think his logic was, the first piece of logic was Blackboard's not going to work, so it can't be Blackboard. And his second logic is he doesn't like forcing students to sign up for anything where details have to be given.
Right.
So Discord only requires a username and maybe your email. You don't have to give them any other info. And Twitch is no information for the viewers unless you make an account, right? So that was his logic behind using those two platforms.
Yeah. I've used Twitch, I think, once. I may be wrong. I can't remember. I had a couple of softwares downloaded earlier at the initial stages of trying to do the live podcast through YouTube. And right now I use a software called OBS. But I think I had Twitch before. and it was a lot more advanced. Like Twitch there's so many customizations you can add. I didn't really know how to work with it, but it looked really cool. So yeah, that could be.
Yeah, Twitch is great for a lot of situations, but it's not the ideal online classroom.
No. So how is the entire Corona thing treating you here, man? Like, you're based in Seoul. Down here in the southern parts, it's there are a few cases. It's not too horrible, and the panic is enormous. So you being kind of no longer the epicenter of the outbreak in Korea, because that transferred over to Daegu. But I guess Seoul is the second largest, has the second largest number of cases in Korea. So what is that like for you there? Like how is life on a daily basis, I guess, at the university? Classes were canceled, I guess. So
I was actually planning on writing a little bit about this today because I'm not sure if you saw, there was an article that went viral about a week or two ago about some American living in, I think, Seoul. Basically saying it was like the end times. Yes. I saw that article, and I know that article didn't just make me angry, but it made a bunch of other people angry too, because I saw the Facebook comments.
Yeah.
But there was that article, but then there were a lot of other articles I came across, basically saying Seoul feels like a ghost town, the end times, or whatever you want to call it. Basically saying Seoul is not the place to be right now. And I was just starting to write a post about that today, so I was basically just saying that initially, like maybe when did it start in Korea? Like late January, right? They started to get the first cases.
Yeah, that's when it was starting to become really serious.
Maybe early January almost.
No, it was later. I think it was later than that.
I know the big outbreak was like 20th of February. The big Daegu thing started at mid-February. So maybe like the whole time from January until February, like 18th or 19th, was kind of, it was when there was one case and the next day there'd be two, then a few days later, three. It was going up very slowly. And there was fear then because it was perhaps fear of the unknown. It was something new. Nobody really knew anything about it. There was just news coming out of China. And there were a lot of rumors going around, which the government cracked down on a lot of them. There were a lot of rumors going around, and there was a lot of just general uncertainty, I think, about the situation. And I remember, I don't know exactly when, but it would have been in January. There were two cases confirmed, like just right next to where I live. And like the Daiso around the corner was closed, CGV was closed because they were visited by somebody.
Okay.
And although they don't say why they were closed, you know that if suddenly Daiso closes and says it's getting sanitized, you know why it is. And there was a lot of fear around that time, even though there weren't many cases, just like I said, the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how bad it is.
Right.
But then it kind of calmed down a lot. And then obviously the big outbreak made everything really bad again. Everybody was panicking. But now I feel like it's not different. Like you go outside, there are less people. Perhaps not many less now, though. There were a lot less. Now, when I go outside around here, it definitely doesn't feel empty. If you go to like Myeongdong or somewhere that had a lot of Chinese tourists beforehand, or just tourists in general, they are very empty compared to what they were. But in the typical areas, the non-tourist areas where most people actually live, I think that life hasn't changed that much. And I think that was what really irked me about those articles that I saw, because it doesn't feel like the end times. It doesn't feel, it doesn't even feel like a ghost town, right? There's people, if you sit on the bus, people will try to avoid you. They will try to not sit next to you. Everything is less busy, that's true, but it's not anywhere near there being no people. There's still a lot of people out and about, and a lot of people eating out. There's still a lot of people commuting. It, like I said, it's definitely less busy, but I feel like Seoul still goes on, and even the fear is kind of still there, but people have lived with it for 2 months now, and everybody's just kind of used to it. So there are still the effects, like, schools are still closed. People are tending to try to avoid each other. All of the large gatherings are closed. Like I said, my Toastmasters as well. But other than those things, and generally trying to stay inside where possible, I think now my life is pretty much the same as it would have been before.
There's sorry, I don't know, in the chat section, somebody with a Chinese name. Sorry, I don't read Chinese, so I don't know your name. But the comment is that apparently 20 to 29-year-olds demographic is one of the hardest hit.
That's not reassuring.
No, and that's the first I ever hear that. My family lives in Seoul, around Gyeonggi province, and it's sort of cautious, normal, in my opinion, not ghost town at all. Yeah, right, exactly. That's what Ethan was just saying. And I guess the one thing that I don't know, maybe people are getting fed up with it, or maybe people are getting tired. The cases in Korea, the number of reported cases has been dropping slightly. And just over the weekend, I had a friend who messaged me and he was asking us to go to dinner. We were not at home, we were just coming back from somewhere. So he ended up going to a restaurant by himself, and he came into an empty restaurant. But he says after about 30 minutes, the place filled up to the brim. So it seems like people are quite comfortable with going outside and sitting in restaurants and just, sticking around crowds. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I would like to believe that is a good thing because, maybe it's not as serious as some people make it out to be. And I wish that it wasn't, because men, economically, this is really bad. I'm not sure what's worse,
Definitely.
So.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, it doesn't affect my life too much, but maybe that's because I spend all my time inside anyway.
Yeah.
But I think there's obviously some degree of caution still needed. I think going to these big gatherings is a bad idea. But at the same time, you kind of have to continue life, right? And I think at least my thing is continue, just do whatever I was doing beforehand, but just stay away from gatherings, stay away from meetings of even more than like 4 or 5 people. Not that you're going to get the virus, but just, I guess you don't want to be that person. And it's like the government has said, I think it's kind of true that they can't control it. It's up to people to try and be responsible. And I think just living life like normal, but just trying to avoid bigger crowds and stuff where possible. But generally there aren't really too many crowds out anyway at the moment, so it's not too hard at all.
Yeah, right. Pretty much nothing else to do. Bugger. Just sit through it and hope for the best. I don't know.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, now we get to see what happens in the rest of the world, because like we were saying before, Korea seems to be one of the, I guess safest might not be the right word, but Korea seems to have handled the situation extremely well, seeing as what's happening basically in every other country in the world right now. China seems to be doing okay as well, if the numbers are true.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. Like, there's so much speculation and so much, conspiracy chatter going on, and I keep getting a lot of that from each and every direction. A couple of weeks ago, I think I held the podcast here by myself, and I was covering COVID. And I found a video on YouTube where a fella, I don't know where, from Chinese origin, descent, was being interviewed, and he was saying that the numbers that the CCP, the Chinese, the communist, what is it, Chinese Communist Party was reporting, were completely skewed and inaccurate, and that the numbers are actually a lot larger than what's being reported. So the stuff that we're getting in the media, who knows? Like, it's hard to discern the truth from all the other noise that's out there, right?
Yeah, and I mean, even in like Italy and those countries right now, right? I'm sure they have, looking at their death rate, it's incredibly higher than I mean, there's a lot of reasons. They say it's because of the older population, but
Hmm.
even with that, the deaths do not seem to match up with the confirmed cases, and there's probably at least I don't know how many more. There's got to be more cases than they've reported, and it's not even misinformation. It's just a total lack of information.
Right, exactly. There was a case of I think the first British citizen that was infected in Wuhan. He got over the infection. There was an article he posted describing like day by day how he felt and what was going on with the system. It was very interesting to read. I don't know. Have you read that, Ethan? Have you seen that one?
I may have. I've read a lot of things.
Yeah, it was a really good article because it kind of described, um, it laid out on a day-by-day basis the experiences and how it felt and what it was like to go through the illness. So it was kind of interesting because it gives you kind of perspective of what to expect. I know it also gave a lot more insight on, on what you would feel like if you caught it, right? Because it's one thing to hear doctors, oh, this is what might happen, shortness of breath. But what does that mean? I get short of breath wearing the freaking masks every goddamn day,
Definitely.
So what does it
I think, like, I was just looking at the comments in chat. The first one, right, the 30% of cases in the 20 to 29-year-old, that's because of Shincheonji, though, right? Because their demographic is very young. And I heard that like 50% of their people are under 40.
That's right.
So yeah, that's why also in Korea it's like 60 or 65% women have the virus because it's the demographic of the church is primarily women.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I guess like you said, maybe it is good because they're not a at-risk group. But yeah, I think just generally it's just so many unknowns, and I think that's what's caused so much of the fear because, like a lot of people say, there seem to be two groups. There seems to be the people who are like doomsday prepping, basically, buying 16 packs of toilet paper, 5 of them at a time at the supermarket.
Yeah, right.
And then there's also the people who are like, oh, it's just a flu.
Yeah.
And I think there seems to be very polarized views about it.
But I think that's usually the case with everything else too, isn't it?
I guess, yeah. Yeah, that is true.
There are always people who kind of are semi-dismissive or semi-accepting, and then there's the other extreme side that, will build a bomb shelter and start stacking it with all canned food that they can purchase out of any local store.
I don't understand why toilet paper though. I find it so hard to get my.
The first time I heard about that was from Kenta, who's actually in a chat right now, and he mentioned that people were buying out toilet paper in Japan, and I was like, why the heck are they doing that? That was so bizarre. And then all of a sudden, it was all over the internet. But Kenta mentioned something. Someone said that it's better to get it earlier to get resistance, if possible. And Ethan was actually just saying, can you just reiterate again what you just mentioned before about England?
So I guess most people probably already know about it by now, but I don't know the exact details. But basically, the British or the English way of dealing with the virus is basically just to let everybody get it once. Try to protect the at-risk groups, so specifically the elderly, but then let all of the healthy people get the virus. And they're trying to predict, or they're predicting that once 60% of the population gets the virus, it will die out by itself because I guess those 60% of the people can't, at least by their logic, can't be reinfected. And then the virus will have trouble spreading. But as we've already said, there are reports of reinfections. I think there's one in Korea, there was one in Japan, there were a bunch in China. So who knows if that's a good idea.
Right, yeah. Guess I have to sit it out and see, but yeah, it could be too late, I don't know. Interesting social experiment, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
Are people primed to that? Because I guess this is something that the government was proposing officially, or what was this? How did the story go with that exactly?
So like I said, I don't know the exact details. I just read a shorter news article on it before, but I think it's basic. I think it's been announced. I think it's like official, because they basically admitted straight up that they can't handle it. They admitted two things: they can't prevent it from getting in, and I'm not sure how many cases they already have. I think it might be 300 or 400. I think it's in the hundreds still.
Okay.
And they also admitted that the hospitals can't handle it. They're not going to be able to handle thousands of people or even hundreds of people needing isolation and the ventilators. So instead of trying to stop everybody from getting it, let everybody get it, and then just focus on the serious cases. But I get this feeling that there's going to be a lot more serious cases if a lot more people have it. So I don't know. I guess they've got some thinking behind it, but I have no idea what it is.
Interesting. Definitely something to watch out for and follow along. That should be.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. It's an hour and 20 minutes, nearly, that we've been chitty-chatting about all kinds of topics. If you are new coming here now, and you don't know what the heck we're talking about other than coronavirus, Corona is not the only topic that we covered. We were talking about Ethan's existence in South Korea and his university and his website, which is www.soulinspired.com. Check it out if you're thinking about coming to Korea, or if you just want to read up on anything. Ethan is a smart dude, one of the top universities, so when you go to his website, you know you're going to read up on some interesting stuff, and there is a lot of good stuff, and I've seen your photography, man. It's very nice, very good stuff.
Thank you.
So check out his website for more info about Korea. If you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, come for more. And yeah, what else? Any last words to anybody who's interested in possibly coming to South Korea and studying at a university here? I guess what would be like the, I don't know, advice on the application process or whatever?
Firstly, go for it. If you do know that you want to come, or even if you would like to experience it, I think that, like I said earlier in this podcast, it's a difficult process. Specifically, it's always difficult to go overseas to a university, but specifically Korea. But stick with it, and it is possible. In regards to the applications, I think that just do your best. It's pretty, the application process is pretty typical. Write like a short introduction about yourself, why you want to come to Korea, why you want to go to this university. And I've only done my application, so I don't know what worked in it or why I got accepted. But I do know people. I have a few close friends who were rejected multiple times at Korea University and who got in. So if you do want to come to Korea, if you try, even if you fail, if you really do want to come and you know that you want to come, keep trying, because it is definitely possible to get in on your second time or even your third time. Not to say it isn't good to have backup plans, but it is possible. And if it's one, then don't give up on the first time, because you can definitely come. And it can be very difficult at times studying here, but at the same time, as difficult as I think it has been, now that I've nearly graduated, I would not take it back. I would not study in another country. If I was back 4 years ago, I wouldn't change my mind, because Korea's been a great place to both live and study.
Right on. Well, there you go. There you have it, folks. All right, cool. Well, I think that's going to be it. Ethan, thank you very much for agreeing to do this. This was very cool. A lot of good information, good chat. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun, yeah.
Yeah, for people listening, if you are thinking about coming to Korea, check out the Facebook group. There is a link for it in the description. It's Korea Travel and Planning. And check out, so Ethan and I are both admins in that particular group, in addition to 2 more people who are also administrating it with us. Check out Ethan's website, full of information about on South Korea and living and working here and stuff and studying. And that's it, I guess, for tonight. I won't be keeping you, Ethan. we're gonna close up here. I'll just leave some last remarks. But yeah, once again, thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks for inviting me. It was first time on a podcast, but it was a good experience, and yeah, it was nice talking about everything. It's nice to talk to somebody who relates.
Yeah, because you said earlier that it was kind of strange to like tell people what life is like in Korea, but you know, people listen, but they don't actually.
Exactly.
They don't always relate to what's going on. Okay, all right, man. Have a good night. Good luck with your graduation, and we'll talk later. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good
See
night.
you later,
Ethan.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
You too.
All right, and so yeah, that was Ethan Brook. Thank you for tuning in. Just to let you know, for next week podcast, there was another talk that was scheduled that's cancelled, but so instead of that, for next week podcast, I'll be holding a talk on how to help people living in Korea and running a business, particularly the ESL type, to get online. So hopefully I'll have somebody else come in last minute and maybe hold a podcast with me, and we'll be talking about online ESL resources, teaching resources, how to get things online, and how to maybe move a business online in the time of need that we have right now with this whole Corona mess. In 2 weeks' time, there's another. I gotta check my calendar because there's a bunch of bookings that we've got. Let me just lay this out for you quickly. Next week, this is it. Oh yeah, in 2 weeks' time, another person with some good insights to the Hagwon industry here in South Korea will be talking education again and life in Korea, particularly his life, what it's like to run a business, how he got involved into it, with it. And then I'll be talking to another person this is going to be April 6th, which is hopefully going to be the last day on which, or the first day on which Hagwons and schools will finally be fully operational. I really, really hope so, man, because I can't handle this nonsense anymore. And we'll have Chris Tharp will be here. He is actually, I don't know Chris Tharp very well, but I read an article he read just recently. It was a very well written article, which prompted me to message him and ask him to come on the podcast to chat with him, and he was very happy to do that. He's got a Medium. He posts his articles on Medium, so that should be a pretty cool interview. Great stream. Thanks all. Take care and have a good evening. Hope for the best. Likewise, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, help the Live in Korea channel grow, share the love, share it with all your people, because we're in serious need, man. Growing the channel will help me, hopefully economically somehow, in a time of need where our school is closed down and like we're getting hit hard. Come back for more videos. Have a wonderful evening and the rest of the week. And yeah, stay safe. Like Ethan said, stay away from crowds, wash your hands, all that stuff. You know, don't eat rotten melons because that's just bad for your stomach. Have a good evening. Have a good night. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on Wednesday in another video that's going to be uploaded, and then next week on another podcast. There'll be some other ones in between, some other videos. Good night. Good night, Bruno. Good night, Kenta. Good night, person whose name I cannot read. See you next time. Bye-bye.